My name is Sophie, and I'm 24. My husband, Drew, is 26. We've been married for 3 years, and we'd known each other since our freshman year in college. If you'd asked me a few months ago, I would have told you our marriage was basically fine, if not perfect. But everything fell apart on one humiliating night at a neighborhood party. I stood there mocking him in front of everyone, and he finally had enough. He stood up, said, "It's over," and walked out of my life. Now I'm living at my parents' house, confused, hurt, and embarrassed by my own actions. I'm here to tell the story from my side, to piece together what happened and how I managed to lose the best man I ever knew. 1. Our background. Drew is an introvert, quiet, thoughtful, the kind of person who prefers cozy evenings at home with a book or a movie. Me, I've always been the social butterfly, craving parties, get togethers, banter with friends. In college, this contrast actually drew us together. I loved how steady and calm he was, and he adored my spark for life. For a while, it worked perfectly. But fast forward to now, 3 years into marriage. At 23, I decided I wanted to be a stay at home wife, no kids yet. Just me focusing on finding myself. Drew, who had a stable job in tech, never complained. He let me do what I wanted, probably because he adored me so much. Instead of a real arrangement, it became me sleeping in, doing minimal housework, and going out with friends, while Drew handled everything: cooking, cleaning, laundry, and of course, all the bills. Looking back, I see how I took advantage of his kindness. I saw him as too soft or too accommodating, and I started resenting that. I wanted excitement, tension, someone to challenge me. Meanwhile, he was just trying to be the supportive husband he thought I wanted. That difference, the difference I once found endearing, became the wedge that drove us apart. 2. Slipping into cruelty. Over time, I did something terrible. I began mocking him, both to his face, though in subtler ways, and behind his back in more blatant ways. My circle of friends, some old, some new, egged me on. They'd laugh about how whipped Drew was, how he never said no to me, how he cooked and cleaned as though he was my personal staff. Flattered by the attention, I joined in, making jokes about his shy demeanor or how he'd do anything I asked. We had no kids, so I never felt tied down to my family obligations. I'd go out late, come home to find him half asleep with dinner still waiting for me. The day after, my friends and I would have a group chat. Someone would say, "Sophie, your man is so whipped." I'd be so bored with that. And I'd respond with something like, "Yeah, he's basically my doormat." I cringe writing that now, but I enjoyed the attention from them, the sense of power. I never realized how those flippant words would lead to the meltdown that changed everything. Drew, for his part, tried to get closer to me. He planned weekend trips or romantic dinners. He'd text me sweet notes if I was out with friends. But each time he did something sweet, I felt less respect for him. As awful as that sounds, I guess I saw it as desperation or weakness. My friends reinforced that viewpoint, saying I needed someone on my level who wouldn't revolve around me so spinelessly. 3. The neighborhood BBQ. One weekend, about a month before the final blow-up, we were invited to a neighbor's barbecue. Drew helped the host set up, manned the grill, and was basically the helpful guy everyone liked but rarely noticed. Meanwhile, I floated with my group of girlfriends, gossiping. Partway through the event, the conversation turned to relationships. Everyone joked about how Sophie's got it easy. Her husband does everything. Some teased him directly, calling him Mr. Housemaid. I joined in, rolling my eyes at his attempts to contribute a story or a joke. My friends teased me with winks and raised eyebrows. "Girl, you need a real man." I saw Drew a few times that day, looking pale, maybe overhearing snatches of conversation. I didn't care enough to stop. I was in too deep. On the car ride home, Drew was silent. I was a bit tipsy and giggly, leaning back in the seat. He didn't say a word about the remarks, but the tension was there. That was the first time I sensed something cracking in him, a quiet heartbreak. But I thought he'd just put up with it, as usual. A big part of the problem was my new circle of friends, especially a woman named Tori who thrived on negativity. She'd say, "Sophie, you're young, you could do so much better. Why'd you get married so early to that shy guy?" Tori and others fueled my arrogance, telling me I should keep going out, keep partying, ignore Drew's attempts to reel me back. They loved the drama, I guess. They loved hearing how I bossed him around. One Friday night, Tori and a few others came over for a movie. Drew made dinner for all of us, then retreated to the bedroom. The minute he was gone, Tori started talking. Gosh, she's sweet but so dull. Are you sure you can stand that forever? Another friend joked, Sophie's the real boss around here, and I again laughed. We ended up devouring the dinner he cooked, leaving the kitchen a mess. The next morning, guess who cleaned it up? Drew, of course. I saw him scrubbing the pans, his back turned to me, shoulders tense. I didn't even apologize. That was the dynamic for months. Each time I cut him down, I'd see a flash of hurt in his eyes. Then he'd swallow it because he loved me. The worst part, I rarely told him I loved him back. In truth, I'd begun to doubt I did. Then came that final blow, an official neighborhood party. Not just a barbecue. This was bigger, with the entire block invited. Food, music, chatting. Drew, being the sweetheart he was, volunteered to help set up tables and chairs. I arrived later with Tori and crew, wearing a new outfit I'd bought with Drew's money. He greeted me with a tired but loving smile. Hey, everything's ready. Want me to grab you a drink? I gave him a dismissive nod. Sure, babe, barely making eye contact. My friends giggled at how subservient he looked. A couple of hours in, the sun was low, and many of us were sitting around a big table in someone's backyard, drinks in hand. Tori started the conversation. So, Sophie, how do you do it? Like, keep a man so whipped? She smirked, and the rest joined in with playful or mocking comments. The entire group, about 8 of us, including a few neighbors who I'd made friends with, cackled away. Possibly we were more than a little tipsy. Drew came to join us, probably curious or wanting to be part of the conversation. Tori saw him approach and, oh so sweetly, teased, oh, hi, Drew. We're just talking about how you'd do anything for Sophie. Isn't that true? She winked at me. I rolled my eyes, deciding to show off. Yeah. I said, loud enough for the entire circle to hear. He practically begs me to boss him around. He loves it. My laughter was brittle, but Tori and the others roared. A couple of guys from the neighborhood looked uncomfortable, but no one stepped in to defend Drew. When the laughter died down, Drew's face had gone pale. For the first time, I saw a steely look in his eyes that I'd never witnessed before. He quietly said, Sophie, can I talk to you alone? The table grew hushed. Tori and others exchanged glances like, uh-oh. I shrugged sure and stood up, still in a half-drunken haze. He led me away from the group around the side of the house. Then, to my utter shock, he turned to me and said, I'm done, Sophie. This is over. I blinked. What do you mean done? Like, done with the party? I tried an awkward laugh. He shook his head. No, I mean us, our marriage, everything. I'm going home to pack your things. You're not coming back there. My heart jolted. I realized he was serious. Drew, wait, why are you so upset? It was just jokes, like always. He stared at me, heartbreak and anger swirling. I've put up with it long enough. You've disrespected me, humiliated me, and turned everyone against me. I love you, but you don't love me. You mock me. I'm leaving, or rather, I'm kicking you out. I tried to speak, but my mouth felt numb. In a quiet, resolute voice, he added, I'll have your things on the porch. Don't be there when I get home. And then he walked off, leaving me standing there, stunned, breathless. When I stumbled back to the table, Tori and others looked at me wide-eyed, some smirking, some pitying. The party vibe had died. People probably guessed we had a marital meltdown. I suddenly felt foolish. Tears prickling at my eyes. Without another word, I hurried after him, like he was gone. I tried calling his phone, no answer. I managed to get a ride from a neighbor who was sober enough to drive. When we arrived at my house, I saw Drew's car in the driveway, lights blazing inside. My stomach knotted. I thanked the neighbor, got out. At the front door, I hesitated, then went in. The living room was empty, but I saw movement down the hall. I followed it. Drew was in the bedroom, furiously packing a suitcase with my clothes, dumping them in with no care. Stop, I cried, tears streaming. What are you doing? He spun around, eyes blazing with tears of his own. I told you, Sophie, it's over. He zipped up the suitcase violently. You can stay wherever you want, but not here. Well, we've been married for 3 years, I sobbed. You can't just throw me out. He scowled, watch me. I should have done this months ago. The moment you started humiliating me in front of the entire neighborhood, you ended whatever we had left. He brushed past me, hauling the suitcase to the front porch. Drew, I'm sorry. I pleaded. I was drunk, I just talked nonsense. He shook his head, tears glistening. No, you've been doing this for months. You have no respect for me. He turned away, voice trembling. I deserve better. I sank to my knees in the hall, sobbing. He marched to get more of my things. Eventually, the front porch was stacked with my bags, boxes of my clothes, my laptop, everything. I tried to reason with him, one about everything we built, the love we had. He glared at me. You destroyed it with your mockery and disrespect. I realized then how thoroughly I'd underestimated him. I never believed he'd stand up for himself. Now that he had, it was brutal and final. When I refused to leave, he threatened to call the police, saying, "This is my house. I bought it before we married. You're the one who has to go." Eventually, I gathered my dignity, or what was left of it, grabbed what I could, and stumbled out into the night. The neighbor who'd given me a ride was gone, so I called my dad, sobbing. He arrived, shocked at the sight of me on the curb with suitcases. He loaded my things into his car, glaring at the house. I tried explaining, but I sounded so pitiful. We left, and that was that. A few days passed. I tried calling or texting Drew repeatedly. He never answered. I left voicemails. "Drew, please, I'm sorry, we can fix this." No response. I realized he was truly done. Meanwhile, Tori and the rest. They mostly ghosted me or sent messages like, "That's rough," but offered no real support. My father let me stay in my old bedroom for the time being. My mother was furious at me for treating your husband like that. She's more old-fashioned and believes a wife should respect her spouse. She told me, "Sophie, you did this to yourself, but we won't let you be homeless." I posted on social media about feeling lost, but half the neighborhood apparently sided with Drew, or at least felt sympathy for him. People commented, "Maybe you should have appreciated him more," or "He's such a nice guy. Why would you humiliate him?" The same friends who once laughed at my jokes about him now vanished, ignoring my calls or texts. Their hypocrisy stung. I guess that's how superficial they were. Then I tried going to the house once more, hoping to talk in person. The door was locked, curtains drawn. My key no longer fit the locks. Drew had changed them. He texted me for the first time in days, just a single message. "Don't come here again." That was it. I realized with a jolt that I was unemployed. Because Drew's money had funded my stay-at-home wife routine, I'd never kept up a real job. My father gave me a stern talking to, "You need to find work. Your husband's not supporting you now." My mother still gave me disappointed looks. I started applying for anything I could find, from retail to office assistant roles. My minimal skill set and spotty record made it tough. Meanwhile, the shame of living back with my parents at 24 weighed heavily. Inside, I felt a swirl of regrets. How I'd belittled Drew, how I'd never cultivated a career, how I'd let friends hype me into a destructive attitude. But I also resented him for leaving so abruptly that logically I knew I'd pushed him too far. My father said, "This might be the best thing for you." My mother said, "Perhaps you'll learn respect next time." They were right, though it hurt to admit. 9. Online venting and final realizations. In my desperation, I posted a version of our story on an online forum, like a confession board, seeking support. Instead, I got hammered with criticism. People called me cruel, toxic, entitled, and said Drew was well rid of me. It stung. Some even speculated I'd have to remain single forever because no man would trust me. The negativity overwhelmed me, so I snapped back at them. But a few gave me genuine advice: get therapy, get a job, apologize sincerely, but respect his boundaries if he's done. I tried, but Drew wouldn't respond. So I focused on job applications and tried to calm my swirling emotions. Days turned into weeks. My mother told me she'd heard from a neighbor that Drew was seemingly doing fine, maybe even looking happier. That knowledge twisted like a knife. I realized I'd always banked on him pining for me if we split, but apparently he was better off. Then I discovered that some of my old friends, like Tori, were trying to get close to Drew now that he was single. The irony was thick. They once belittled him, now they wanted to date him. A mutual acquaintance told me, "Drew isn't interested. He sees right through them." That gave me a bitter satisfaction, but also hammered home how thoroughly I'd lost him. Eventually, the divorce was final. We had no kids, no major shared assets. The house was his before marriage. The judge granted me a small settlement. That was all. I moved on, or tried to, from my parents' place. I got a part-time job, enough to help me start saving. I still text Drew once in a while, something like, "I'm so sorry." He never replies. He's done, and I don't blame him. My heartbreak is real, but so is my awareness of how I caused it. Now, months later, I'm focusing on rebuilding my life. I might eventually move out to a small rental. I'm not sure if I'll ever find someone else like Drew. I also wonder if I truly deserve someone as good as he was. That's the tragedy. I only saw his worth when I crushed it. In the end, I lost a good man because I let petty mockery and shallow friends warp my perspective. I tested his limits, bragging he'd never leave. He left. My mother always taught me to appreciate the quiet, loyal type. Instead, I turned that loyalty into a joke, humiliating the one person who truly cared. So, yes, I'm here at my parents' job hunting with no real social circle left. The cool friends abandoned me, Tori included. The neighbors see me as the woman who belittled her husband until he snapped. I can't blame them. If I have any advice for anyone reading this, treasure the kindness in your partner. Don't degrade them for it. Don't let the illusions of popularity or the thrill of mocking overshadow genuine love. I do love Drew in my own messed up way, but it's too late. He's gone. I'm left picking up the pieces. That's my story, from mocking my quiet, loving husband at a neighborhood party to losing him in a single night. I'm living the consequences every day now, and I hope others can learn from my mistakes.